Imagine if these sessions reach 1 million people.
Oh, dream on. But I tell you, Michael Shanks, who's known as Timtimfed online, his work does.
And it's amazing. I can't wait for this session.
And watch out for the cute teddy bear. It's so gorgeous. In this session, we're focusing on storytelling. And our guest, Michael Shanks, knows a great deal about that from every angle. He's a writer, director, producer, editor, VFX composer, musician. And what's interesting about Michael is a lot of his work's seen online. He's the creative behind Timtimfed, a spectacularly successful YouTube channel. You post sporadically, but to a powerful fan base. He's also part of Late Night Films, which has produced much of his work. And he's with us today. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to start, because you started at this when you were a kid, really, 17, I think, maybe even earlier. We're going to talk about actually how you got to where you're going later. But as a kid, what was driving you? Why were you interested in storytelling, visual storytelling at that age?
Well, I remember that sort of as a really young kid, I was just like, I grew up on like sort of a farm where I didn't really have I didn't really have any neighbors or nearby friends to play with. And I spent a lot of my time like playing video games and watching movies and off of VHS tapes, etc. And I remember when like DVDs came out, I became really obsessed with the behind the scenes of movies that would come often on like the second disc. And I just loved that stuff. I couldn't get enough of it. It just felt like opening up the secrets behind all these magic tricks that I've been sort of obsessing over since I can remember.
So it was sort of the magic of storytelling and how they were made was what really sort of got you into it. And did you just go and do a course, or what did you do as a kid? Were you just teaching yourself as you went?
Yeah, so the way that I kind of started teaching myself how to sort of get into the film industry, well, it wasn't trying to get into the film industry. It was just simply that interest in kind of behind the scenes stuff became an interest in looking up online tutorials as I got older. And as I was like 16 and 17, I started to just go online and find tutorials for After Effects, like a pretty available software, and realize, oh crap, I can make things blow up, I can make things disappear. And that suddenly became really, really exciting to me.
So when you were 17 at school, you were in the final year of school and you entered a competition which really sort of revolutionized your life. Tell me about how that happened. What was it? What did you do?
Absolutely. Well, so in year 12, I was going on a video game website. It was like an online magazine called the Escapist magazine. It's an American website. And they were hosting lots of kind of like funny video content. And this was sort of in the early days of YouTube, where YouTube existed, but we didn't quite know what it was. And they had a film festival, which is make a short film. And if you win the film festival, we get a contract to essentially use that short film as a pilot episode for a 25-part series. And I thought, like, well, I've been, doing theater stuff, and I've been looking up how to make film stuff, and I really want to do that. So I made a little, I guess what became a pilot, a little kind of 5-minute, really low quality by, today's standards, but for a 17-year-old with a couple of his friends on an old DV cam camera, was fairly decent. And so, yeah, my final week of VCE, of high school, I got offered this job saying that for the next sort of 18 months, I'll be making a fortnightly series of action comedy to be put on this American platform. And that was kind of, what my life became. Essentially, it was a video game website, so it had to be kind of a video game related piece of content. And so I settled on this idea, which was almost like an inverted Tron. Like, what if the characters in video games that we forced to kind of shoot each other and fight got fed up with that, and they were sort of slaves to us controlling them. So they figured out a way to come into the real world and would destroy all humans and all people that had been forcing them to be embattled in these kind of slave fights. And the idea was, that's a way to get all video game characters out in the real world, and then we can follow two main characters as they every week can encounter new characters from different games. So it was really just like an excuse to do a series of sketches sort of making fun of every type of game or every game that I could think of and wanted to play around with an ongoing narrative that kind of became a bit more self-serious as the show went on.
I think like one of the reasons that we wanted to talk to you for this series is because of the most extraordinary piece of work that you've very recently released called Reboot It, because it's one of the most beautiful pieces of work that we've seen come out of Screen Australia Online, and I'm fascinated to know a little bit about that because it's very new and it's only just come up. So let's play the trailer first for that, and then we'll come back and talk about how it all came together. Story. It's a sad story. I guess one of the odd questions I want to ask you first is how do you feel watching that little clip that we just played now that it's out in the world?
So I actually, I really like the piece, and it's something that I have rewatched because there's been, a few screenings of festivals, and I go along to that. And it's actually something I really enjoy watching with an audience because it gets all the right reactions that I want. And the lead character's animation is just so beautiful to me, and our animator Samuel Lewis just did such an incredible job with that, and it's been such a long gestating idea that I still find a great sense of satisfaction seeing that idea kind of come together and sort of rendered like that.
Just tell me, at the heart of it, what was the story you had in your mind at the very beginning that you wanted to tell with it?
Well, at the very beginning, I thought of the idea of essentially, what if kind of special effects creatures were sort of actors, and therefore the obsolete special effects would no longer find jobs in modern Hollywood. And I was thinking, okay, that's a cool idea. What's the kind of first famous effect that I really think of as being game changing? And that was the Ray Harryhausen stop motion animated skeletons from Jason and the Argonauts. And this was a premise that essentially made me think, well, if this were the premise, we can showcase the history of Hollywood special and visual effects creations coexisting within the same live action frame. And that's the sort of idea that if I saw somebody else do it, I'd be really annoyed that I hadn't come up with it. And that was when I knew, oh, this is an idea I actually want to pursue and put in the very hard yards and hard work in order to make it a reality.
Talk me through the process of that. So you've got your fledgling idea, you know vaguely what you want to do with it. How did that play out? What did you do, step by step? Just simply, what did you do?
So the very first thing that I did was I started writing. Well, once I kind of figured out what the premise was, I started writing, and actually wrote it out as a feature plan. Like I had planned out a treatment of all the beats of a feature film, which is ostensibly the same premise, but goes off in a much larger direction. And then I thought, well, I'm never going to get the funding to make that because that's a very expensive feature film because it's a special effect in every single shot sort of thing. And then my producer at Late Night Films, Chris Hocking, pointed out to me that the Skip Ahead submissions were open. Skip Ahead is an initiative from Screen Australia and YouTube to fund projects by people that have proven they can connect with an online audience. And so I had that criteria. The criteria for connecting with online audiences I had from the YouTube channel Timtimfed. So I thought, okay, cool. I'm a candidate for this. So this is a cool way to make a piece of work that can kind of showcase this idea. And so we made a pitch for that, made a video pitch, and put together a budget and stuff. And we were accepted to get the funding. So from there were a couple of writing workshops with it up in Sydney because I'm based in Melbourne. And I actually really struggled to write the script because I always loved the premise and I always loved the character, but I didn't know which plot to go with because there were so many different directions into which you could take it. And the thing about short films that frustrates me is very often short films are just business cards to turn it into something else. And obviously I just said, oh, I thought of this as a feature, but then, oh, a short film, maybe a short film will help us get the feature. But I didn't want it to just be a kind of proof of concept. I really needed it to be a standalone piece, because the idea of ever turning it into a feature is so unrealistic. That's such a big dream that I'm not going to put a year and a half to 2 years into making this incredibly challenging short just for it to be a business card for something that doesn't exist. So I really needed to get the script right. And there were so many versions of the script. And I just realized, no, like it needs to be, it's much classier. It's more deft if you just pull all the dialogue out, and it made the whole idea suddenly like come alive to me. And then I think I wrote that final draft, completely new premise with no dialogue, in like a day. Once I had that idea, it was just easy. And from there, we went into production. So that's when kind of the producers at Late Night Films really stepped up and figured out how to fund this thing, because it's a really ambitious short. It's not just that we have, it's a live action film. However, we have a stop motion animated main character. We also feature an animatronic velociraptor, a creature from the Black Lagoon style rubber suit and monster, a 2D animation on cell paper, and a mid-90s liquid metal man effect, like an early bad CGI character. Shoot was only 5 days, but it was still 5 days of huge location moves. We shot at Dockland Studios. We had like an outdoor sword fight to shoot. We had to shoot in a train. We had to shoot at a house. We had to shoot all these different locations on a bit of a shoestring budget in the end. And we can talk about budget a bit more if we like. And then the post-production process took months. The stop motion alone took only 6 months. I mean, it took 6 months just to do that one character. And then, of course, there's the VFX of me compositing that character into the live action plates, as well as the edit and the scoring, so writing the music. And as I wrote and performed the music, as well as doing the bulk of the edit and the visual effects. That means when you're unable to delegate to too many people, or even if I could, I like to be controlling, so I wouldn't have necessarily done it. It meant that post-process kept going on, because I couldn't be composing whilst I was editing, because I can only do one thing at a time. So, yeah.
Oh my God, I'm completely exhausted listening to you.
Yeah, most people are.
So what was the budget in the end?
The budget, I think, was about $120,000, which when I realized that sort of money was available, I thought, well, let's just make the feature. That's so much money. Who could ever have that much money? But just the stop motion alone took probably probably cost a little less than half of that. And that's just for one aspect of the story, as well as, 5 days of shooting with lots of extras and actors and locations and props. Like it ended up all going away. And as is the way with Late Night Films productions, we didn't take fees for it. So we paid everybody else, but we, didn't make a fee. And obviously the film will never turn a profit, but that's not what it's about. It's about making a piece of work that we're really proud of.
Okay. So with managing all of those components, how did you keep track of the story, particularly when there's no narration to sort of make you follow a through line, if you like? How did you keep track of your story?
I've said this before, but I think I do most of my direction in my storyboards. I storyboard everything fastidiously. I hand draw them. I draw every single shot, and I'm not happy to go onto set until I have a full comic book of the entire film. And when on set, like, there are absolutely collaborative moments, and you're willing, and you're like, I'm open to collaboration, but we have such little time on set because I'm always trying to shoot so much. And so I go into it with a really specific thing of what I want. And as long as it works on the storyboard, I know it's going to work in the film, really.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's really useful. Now, I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about The Wizard of Oz, because that was also a sort of mega achievement, really. How did you come up with the idea of The Wizard of Oz?
Well, yeah, the idea for Wizards of Oz was an older idea that I had for a few years. And then I was sort of making YouTube-y stuff and making sketches, and I made this kind of a short film. And then one day, Screen Australia actually reached out saying that we think you'd be a good candidate to receive some funding if you had like an idea for, say, an online series. Come and talk to us, and we'll kind of point you in the right direction. So I went in and sort of they kind of said what's available, and I went, okay, right. What if a Middle Earth style wizard got fed up with fighting orcs and goblins every day and thought, screw this, I'm moving a Footscray, and moved over to the Melbourne suburbs. And I thought that's kind of a funny idea for a sitcom-y sort of series. And so after Screen Australia said, we think you could get funding if you wanted to go for it, I got in touch with a friend of mine, Nicholas Issel, who's a writer, and we sort of I sort of said, do you want to write the show together? And he said, yep. And we sort of broke down 6 rough episode synopsis, and then, took that back to Screen Australia, and they liked it, and they sort of approved it, which was great. Well, so then we wrote the scripts, and we gave them the scripts, and the scripts are essentially 90 minutes worth of like pretty full-on fantasy comedy. And their maximum budget, for multi-platform funding was $350,000 at the time. And they said, we love the scripts, but there's no way you can make it with this budget. And I went, no, we will. And they said, no, you can't, you got to pay everybody. And I said, like, okay, do you have to pay me? And they went, no. And I thought, great, we'll make it. Because I just didn't want to compromise on making the show that I wanted to make. So with that amount of money, with over 40 speaking roles, and with like probably about 40 locations as well, we managed to make this thing. And it's full of special effects and etc. Like the opening scene is a big battle on like a fantasy mountainscape in a castle. And the way that we made that work is me and the producer Chris Hocking, we did all the visual effects for no. We basically did the whole post-production for no money. So to give you an idea, I co-wrote the show with Nick. I directed the show. I edited. I did the visual effects, I composed the music, and I was the lead actor, and I got paid my writer's fee. That was the only fee that I took. And so we could put the rest of the money and save it for production. And so the way to make that work was I moved back into my mum's house, and I stayed there and did 36 weeks of unpaid post-production. So I essentially burnt a year doing nothing but visual effects and editing and composing music. And yeah, it was a crazy year. But it was awesome. I loved it.
But is that the story of what you have to do what you do? In other words, never earn any money?
Well, I think it's the story of how I had to do what I wanted to do. There is another way to do it where they had $350,000 available. They liked my work. They said, hey, we'll fund you a series if you've got an idea. And the idea would have been I could have just made 4 or 5-minute episodes. But I didn't want to do that. I think that's a fine thing to do. But I thought, I don't want to make 4 or 5-minute episodes or whatever. I want to make something big. I want to make something massive. I want to kill myself to make this show, or otherwise it's not worth it. Because what matters is the program. It's about the finished product to me. And okay. I'm happiest when I'm my busiest. That's always, what keeps the dark thoughts at bay.
That sounds exciting. It sounds like you're bringing the dark forces in with your story. So when you're considering story, do the visuals come to you first, or does the actual story come first, or is it a mix?
It's absolutely a mix. Often when I'm writing, I'm drawing pictures. So if I've just written a little horror film, for example, and I had kind of an idea of what a scene would go, and it was kind of based on somebody hearing a noise in their house, as so many horror scenes begin. And I'd gone away for a week in this little house to write it on my own. And it was about this character kind of being dragged around and hearing somebody's head smash on the wall from a distance and not knowing what it was. And I was walking around the house, banging my head against the wall, just kind of pretending I was that character and getting in the zone of it. And then drawing out like what shots would be. And this was before I knew exactly, this was kind of on more of on a scene by scene level. But I was drawing out shots and pictures from it before I wrote the scene, because I needed to figure out where the kind of visual climax would be before I needed to then kind of build towards it. So, so yeah, it kind of comes at once.
Okay,
I mean, at different times.
No, that's good. So let's just talk about the platforms that you use, because obviously your YouTube channel, Timtimfed, what does Timtimfed mean, says Mrs. Ignorant here?
No, well, it's completely incomprehensible. It's actually the name of my first teddy bear when I was a kid.
I wondered if it was that. I was thinking it was a teddy bear name. It had to be.
Really? Oh, yeah. That's funny. I don't know why. It was sort of a thing of like, it was just a thing that I had named as a kid. And then when I started like playing online games when I was like, 15 or whatever, needed to choose a username, I just went, Timtimfed. And so then when I started a YouTube channel, I was just using my, hey, we've got somebody joining us. Oh no, they've gone. I was just using my teddy bear's name for that. And so then when I joined YouTube, I was just using the username that I used on like video games and stuff. And then when I put something on YouTube that went quite big, I was already using that name, so I guess that was my name. But I don't mind. I've actually got the teddy bear here because I'm working from home.
Oh, look, he's so cute. Timtimfed, I love you.
Yeah, it's the only toy I didn't throw away because I was like, well, I've been the namesake. It was my favorite toy.
I love it. That's your motif.
Yeah.
So what was the first thing that went big for you on Timtimfed?
Well, so I'd done this Doomsday Arcade web series for the Escapist magazine, and then I kind of took like a little time off, and then just one day I came up with this really silly idea for this kind of game joke based along the game Skyrim that had recently come out. And I think the very first thing that I did that went big, which is kind of the first thing I really kind of gave a go with, was it was like an edit of that Robbie Williams, Nicole Kidman, Then I Go and Spoil It All by saying something stupid like I Love You song. Yeah, and it was like a goofy version of that tied in with like a meme that was going along with that game. And I just released that one night, not thinking much of it, and then it got a couple to 3 million views online. I think we were to the top of Reddit, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe YouTube's possible. I don't know. And then I think it was only a few weeks after that that I had actually made probably my first proper piece of content, which was, again, another video game parody, because I sort of had that as a brand, or is this where my head was at? And yeah, it went again to the top of Reddit. Somebody posted it up there, and it just got a heap of views and eyes on it. And I just thought, okay, cool, that's 2 in a row. I'm just going to keep doing this stuff when ideas come to me, I guess.
So one of the ideas that I saw long before I knew I'd be talking to you, whenever, it was a while ago now, was this random clip that I want to play at the moment because I thought it was the funniest thing, and I actually reposted. I'm damned if I know how I found it. But have a look at this.
And welcome back. Djokovic readying the serve against his toughest opponent to date, a World War II M1 Abrams tank.
It's set to be a thrilling match.
Shh. Advantage Djokovic.
Caterpillar treads. Great off-road. Not so much on the clay court.
No, of course, tank's not traditionally designed to play tennis. Abrams serve. And wow, what a turnout.
Great attendance.
Some said inviting a sentient tank to play tennis would ruin the sport.
I agree with them.
Me too. Oh, and look at that, just terrible sportsmanship.
That's just not cricket.
Where did the idea for the story of Djokovic playing with a tank come from?
I don't exactly know where the idea came from. I remember that I was in a car on the way back from a shoot we were doing in the Flinders Ranges. So I was just sitting in the backseat of a car of a camera guy I didn't know. And I think it was just as stupid as I was just daydreaming and bored. And I thought, oh, what if a guy played tennis against a tank? And that'd be pretty funny. And so I did. I guess I find I really enjoy re-editing footage and inserting stuff into that rather than restaging it if you're doing kind of like a sketch or a parody, which is hard from a licensing point of view, and it's always more challenging because you can't shoot something bespoke. You've got to work with what you've got.
No, I thought it was terrific. Okay. So you're not a prolific poster on Timtimfed. I mean, how do you generate audiences? Because I know Rebooted's gone up and it's doing great guns within the first few weeks. How do you let your audience know that you're out there again?
The truth is I really don't know. I can tell you what I've heard advice from other people that I don't follow, which is that I think in order to like grow an online audience, one thing that people always say is you want consistency and you want communication with your audience. So if you say, I'm going to release a video every Tuesday at 4 p.m., then you release a video every Tuesday at 4 p.m. People know to look for it, they love it, and they wait for the next one. So they keep coming back every Tuesday. I guess I've always liked to work quietly and anonymously in the background, making something for a long time until I really like it. And then I'll release it and say, here's a thing, and then I'll disappear again. So with Rebooted, that came out a few weeks ago, but that was the first piece of content I'd released on the channel in over 3 years. And my plan on reaching the audience was I didn't have a plan. I just thought, well, I'm just going to, what I've only ever done is put out a piece of work. And if people like it, if it's good, people will find it.
Your Djokovic clip, I think, did like 7 million views or something, didn't it?
I don't know if it's 7, but it's certainly...
It was a lot.
It's a few million, yeah. It's 2 or 3, I think.
Oh, I'm exaggerating.
No, fine. I'm happy with that. But so yeah, I don't know. It seems like a bit of like alchemy for me when these things seem to go. Because Rebooted has gotten. I really thought it was going to come out and get 20,000 hits, which is not bad, I guess. But for like an Australian-produced short film, I suppose that's quite respectable. But I was going to be happy with that. But it's at about 750,000 right now, so I'm really thrilled with that. And
it's only in like 3 weeks or something, isn't it? 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What's because I've got this nice subscriber base of 160,000 odd on YouTube. I guess that means that's potentially 160,000 people, which nobody sees. Not every subscriber sees what they're subscribed to, but that's a potential base of 160,000 people who might share it on Facebook, who might share it to Reddit, and the more people that do that might end up getting something that goes to the top of Reddit or goes, shares wildly on Facebook.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I don't know.
All right. My final question to you is this. Mm-hmm. What's your advice? I want to know how to tell really good visual stories. Give us your top tips on how I go about that.
Okay, I think that one thing that I've noticed is that almost every single joke and every single visual joke that I've done subconsciously, I've stolen from The Simpsons series 2 to 12. So if you watch those series of The Simpsons, that's a great Bible. But I'd say one thing that really frustrates me is in live action filmmaking, people are not telling story, are not expressing narrative without dialogue very often. It seems to me I watch a lot of movies where it's just wide shot, close up of the actors. Cool, we've got the dialogue, they've riffed a little bit, moving on. And I find that really, really boring. And I love it when I'm watching something where I can just tell, like, man, on the script, there's less dialogue in the script than there would be in a normal thing. And it's in looks, it's in camera placement and movements, it's in a sound effect. And that's how you're being fed information. Where you have to kind of pay attention, where you are using all the tools and the toolkit of filmmaking rather than just sound, rather than just dialogue. And I think you can see this best expressed in animation. And I wish more people use that in live action work. If you're looking for live action directors who do stuff like that, Edgar Wright comes to mind, Sam Raimi comes to mind, Steven Spielberg, like very mainstream, Gore Verbinski. These are people that really know how to move their camera and use their frame to tell story. Wes Anderson. But I'd say study animation, study Ghibli and Pixar films. They really are a masterclass in how to use visuals to communicate narrative. And I'd also say, if you're like writing or directing something, try and pull the dialogue out. Just even as just an exercise, pull the dialogue out of your script and try and figure out, well, how would I communicate that without anybody saying something? If you're on set, shoot the scene without dialogue, get the actors to express it in other ways, or just see what happens and try and push yourself to that, because I find it just really satisfying.
Well, hopefully we're still going to see a lot more of that for you. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much to Michael for being on board. It was an absolute treat to talk to you.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Thank you for pulling me out of the boredom of quarantine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're all doing that. So that's it for this session of Running Free. Thanks, of course, to ACMI, who patiently record, who patiently edit, and who, better still, transmit us on their YouTube channel. So we'll see you next time. Thanks again. See ya.
Thanks. Bye.